3 years after the first chapter of the Great War was over, I announced the commencement of Operation Scarecrow.
RDI began to notice that the pattern of robot activity had changed, and large-scale attacks on the cities had ceased. Since then, only scattered robot activity with the odd, large concentration had been reported. RDI had suspicions that this indicated the robots were greatly advancing in their development. This theory led to a flurry of intense activity within RDI. Unfortunately, the few robot parts salvaged by the expedition only rendered more questions than answers. Calypsian authorities also were speculating over the meaning of this change. Could it be the lull before the storm, or just another example of normal robot evolution?
To help obtain more conclusive evidence, RDI, in conjunction with the Calypsian authorities, launched a grand search entitled Operation Scarecrow. The entire Calypso population embarked on this search to gather the parts needed to provide answers.
Operation Scarecrow was a huge success. They were correct in what they thought could be happening. As a result, many new items were created using the salvaged robot technology, yet another step towards being able to take the fight to Akbalchimi. The mutants have every reason to see human civilization as the enemy after they were abandoned in the chaos created by the robots. One of the more intelligent of the mutant species, the Thoriod, which are known for creating temples, creating weapons and having mind force type powers, embarked on one of the first attacks by mutant kind soon after Operation Scarecrow.
Somehow they got their hands on a unique one-of-a-kind item that gave them an upper hand, enabling their ability to increase their numbers and, in turn, allowing them to attack human outposts and technologically advanced locations like the teleporters.
After a formidable fight, the brave colonist Cedric Halfgolf killed the Thorio Warlord and salvaged the one-of-a-kind artifact, the unique legend war axe, which put an end to the mutant attacks, for now. Three days after the mutant threat was over, an Imperial remote sensor unit in the outer rim of the Calypso system detected a large foreign object traveling at high speed. The object turned out to be a Class IM-2B meteor and was headed with a 94.45% chance of impact. The expected impact would be deemed catastrophic if nothing was done to prevent the incident.
Fortunately, the Imperial fleet and the Exodus space station will take action to firmly destroy the meteor before it enters critical Calypso proximity.
1 month after it was first detected, Imperial forces, following an initial failed attempt, managed to successfully destroy the meteor, threatening mankind's first colony. The sudden turn of events took place in utmost secrecy. Apparently, a small, cloaked, unmanned spacecraft carrying some sort of high-powered, high-tech, disruptive device succeeded in getting past the robot fleet surrounding the rock. When the device was detonated, the meteor split into 1 million pieces of rock, dust and debris, which also crippled the robot forces. Some sources claim the technology gathered in Operation Scarecrow was an essential key to the success of the meteor destruction. Following its destruction, fragments of the destroyed meteor pounded Calypso with rocks and debris. The debris contained an unknown alien ore that altered the geological setup of the planet. The fact robot forces were caught trying to bombard Calypso with a planet-killer asteroid just shows they're trying everything to try and kill off the human species. It is unknown if the alien ore was part of the robot plan. Further strange robot activity was monitored when they abducted Professor Niels Barton 2 months later. 2 months after this, the Imperial government confirmed that he was dead and they had failed to revive him. The robot forces had managed to infect Professor Barton with some kind of DNA/soul disruptor, probably a prototype made by the professor himself based on the design. On a stranger note, reports leaked from the rescue team state that when Barton was recovered, he was missing several body parts which have still not been accounted for. 2 months after Professor Barton was found dead, the Imperial government issued a warning to all colonists on Calypso. Agents from the intelligence services reported huge robot forces assembling around the Akbalchimi systems. The reports included information about new models utilizing new technologies that allow greater numbers to be teleported to Calypso. Soon after this, the brave Calypso colonists reported that a new robot menace had been spotted on the battlefield. Several drone elite units were seen on Amathera around the Wolverine area. Initial analysis of the wreckage showed a highly sophisticated communication matrix. Reports began to flood into the EVN offices from intense robot battles being waged at Wolverine Hope. The battle-weary colonists trying to hold the position requested immediate assistance, but it seems no relief is in sight. Unofficial government reactions seem to suggest that parts of Amathera were considered lost. Further concern was voiced for Nape Valley, where a considerable robot force was also gathering. An even more disturbing report also suggested a massive buildup of lesser-generation robots around the highly populated Fort Ithaca. Miners fleeing back to the outpost reported encountering killer robot squads murdering mineral and end-matter prospectors, thereby exerting a chokehold on business and trade at the outpost. The department secretary informed EBN the robots must not be allowed to gain a foothold around Fort Ithaca. Although such weapons would only be used as a last resort, the loss of Fort Ithaca would be a devastating blow to Calypso's colonization. The attack didn't stop there. The robot chokehold on Calypso began to grow tighter. Relentless waves of massive robot forces continued to attack human outposts, especially Fort Ithaca, which was their main focus of aggression. Imperial recon units also reported robot troop buildups in the area around Fort Troy and Camp Echidna, a major assault being imminent. Up to now, attack forces, mostly made up of drones, were observed, but more and more numbers of warrior and trooper-class robots began to appear on the battlefield. Even the dreaded warlocks were spotted. Something new in these attacks was an eerie sense of coordination. Sources within the government said they are worried about the heavy usage of the revival terminals on Calypso and that the widespread practice may result in power drains or, in the worst-case scenario, a collapse of the entire revival system backbone due to the stress. In the days that followed, the machine menace pushed forward to the Jason Center, Atlas Haven and Fort Argus areas. Colonist casualties were enormous. The revival terminal backbone had extra power rerouted from other vital community systems in order to keep up with the large amount of deaths and resurrections. Alarmingly, the robots used Calypso's own teleporter system in order to gain access to the settlements, a deadly ploy observed only once before when the robots were hunting Professor Niels Barton. It seems now that they were only testing whether that chink in our armor could be exploited later in this full-scale attack. After bloody resistance to the final horrendous onslaught of machine forces, the threatening robot offensive diminished. Not being completely wiped out, however, the machines were being kept at bay by the brave and resilient colonists. Secret transmitters were the key to the robot's success. The named robot warlock, Lord Teleton, withdrew from combat once enough of the secret transmitters had been found by mankind. With the new technology in RDI hands, the colonists of Calypso gained a foothold on Calypso that the robots will have to fight hard to get back. Although this was a gigantic step forward for securing the new world, the robot menace is not yet forgotten. They may have lost the battle, but the war is yet to be won. Unlike other threats that could eventually be overcome, Calypso's wildlife is one threat the colonists have no choice but to learn to coexist with. This is of no exception when the annual migrating and mating season starts. Only a month after the robot attack was over, Imperial zoological scouts began to report abnormally high pheromone readings. Reports of Atrox marauders, a rare sight, attacking colonists was an excellent indication of the status of the herd's reproductive cycle.
While marauders are a rare sight, I believe they are an excellent indication of the status of the herd's reproductive cycle. Shortly after I arrived on Calypso, I was lucky enough to be on an expedition in the area just west of where Fort Argus stands today. We had encountered alphas and dominants all over the continent for many years, but suddenly we began noticing new, larger and more aggressive Atroxes like the marauders.
Continuing on, Professor Nuss explained the secret behind the Atrox reproductive cycle.
We set out to discover what could have lain behind the surprising appearance of these more aggressive strains of Atrox. As we crossed the mountain range east of the Rogue Plains, we caught sight of the mighty Atrox Queen, a monstrous creature, bigger than anything ever seen. Protected by feral marauders, we observed the queen laying one huge egg and a clutch of smaller ones around it. These lesser embryos hatched quickly to form a merciless defensive pack around the queen and her main egg. The large egg was left to incubate under the Calypsian sun, absorbing radiation that would mutate its genome and spawn a more savage breed of Atrox. This level of evolution in just one generation was completely unprecedented.
The Atrox reproductive cycle is several years in length. Its results can be devastating for the natural areas it inhabits, restricting access for other animals and colonists alike. It was up to the hardiest hunters to pick up a trail on this queen and her pack, destroy the egg they protect, and spare Calypso and its colonists from an even deadlier wilderness. In the following weeks, the continuous appearance of large Atrox herds on the northern plains of Eudoria suggested that the Atrox reproductive cycle was reaching its climax. Atrox hatchlings were expected to appear very soon, a sure sign that the mighty queen herself was close by and ready to come out and lay her egg. Together with colonists from all over Calypso, the Atrox Queen was found and destroyed by the desert rangers. Although heavy casualties were suffered, the hardy colonist band was upbeat as they peppered the beefy brute into oblivion. Mossamis provided EBN with an on-the-scene report of the Queen's demise, informing them that skinning the monster Queen gave very little hide as her skin had been too badly damaged during the hunt. She did, however, manage to chew up a few brave colonists before her death, and gutting the creature later revealed several armor pieces, including a rare female shadow helmet. Several wallets were also found in the Queen's stomach, with over 100 PEDs being recovered. What was not found, however, was the egg. In the following weeks, when people were starting to feel safe, people's worst fears were realized as a group of delighted pfeffoids were found dancing around what appeared to be the Atrox Queen's egg. Obviously, the pfeffoids got their hands on the egg while our brave colonists were fighting off the Queen. We always knew the pfeffoids weren't our greatest friends who would blame them after they were abandoned during the Great War. Following this, people began to hunt down the pfeffoids in search of the egg to try and avoid the horrors it is due to hatch. Eventually, after a long and hard fight, Zest0S discovered the egg on a slain pfeffoid warlord. In a further bizarre twist, it seems the shrewd Zest0S harbored the egg in his apartment and storage before finally selling it to nightclub mogul Nevady for 100,000 PED. The famed egg now constitutes a kooky sideshow for revelers at Nevady's astral night spot. With so little information available and its only possible source missing, we have little idea what to expect from the egg. A science team has been dispatched to the asteroid Duke Joint to take a small test sample of the egg for further analysis. Following these events, recent excavations under the Hjorton building in New Oxford revealed rather well-endowed mutant species bungling around the nether regions of the cultural capital.
It just won't do. What will the neighbors think?
To add to the problems, pfeffoids made a botched attempt to trounce Fort Fury. Despite the clan warlords' attempts to unify pfeffoid clans against their common enemy, Calypso's champions renounced their bid for domination and sent them running with the fear of Lootius. While Governor Dumpty tried to patch together his fort, rumours arrived of a new pfeffoid force building in their camp, east of Hadesheim. New roars and rumblings were being reported, suggesting the pfeffoids had new courage, new power, and a new will to show you how to spell fury.
Not again, I'm off.
There's something strange afoot. We wonder what it will look like. During the following migration after this, the robots took advantage of the fact the colonists are busy elsewhere and launched a devastating attack on one of Calypso's most coveted resources, the oil rig. The RX units made another appearance later on, and the government revealed they had intercepted a communication stating that a squad of RX units is on their way to Calypso, and their mission was to take control of the oil rig in PvP2 and deprive colonists of its resources. Once again, the government placed bounties on these attackers from Akbalchimi, who were once our soldiers helping us fight this great threat. Based on information retrieved from a Mulak camp, security forces expected another wave of RX units to arrive on Calypso in the coming weeks. This time splitting into two groups, the toughest RX battle units attempted to take the oil rig in PvP2, while a lesser surveying group attempted to scan PvP1 for a suitable base site. Their mission was successful, and a base was established in PvP1. Towards the end of these events, an undercover agent that had infiltrated the ranks of the RX units passed over advanced RX technology to colonist militia. Based on a unique electrolyte compound, The technology greatly enhances the firepower of almost any weapon. Although the signs seem to back up the government's claims, colonists still speculate as to if this is all just a misunderstanding and partially the government's fault. Only time will tell what will come of the RX units. Two years after the robots' last major attack on Calypso, the colony was shocked to discover robots pouring through the Calypso teleporter system once again. The waves were sporadic but still caused alarm as city traders were forced to reach for their holsters while peacefully peddling their wares at outpost marketplaces. A number of fine merchants were blasted by the brazen beamers as they rampaged through the streets. Governor Dumpty of Fort Fury denounced all authority on Calypso, calling it a disgrace that the robots could gain access to the teleport system, adding, "Well done everybody that fought off last night's attacks. But this was obviously a recon operation by the coordinators, so we better brace ourselves for the main onslaught." Following this event, the Calypso Defense Forces made an official broadcast announcing that there is a heightened state of alert in Wolverine Hope and Nate Valley on Amathera, and Fort Ithaca, Fort Troy, Zikion, and Hadesheim on Eudoria. They advise colonists to have supplies and survival gear stocked and restrict outdoor movement as much as possible. As a desperate attempt to stall for time, Calypsian authorities entered negotiations with representatives from the robot forces. Sources within CDF indicated that the negotiations are designed to stall for time in order for Earth to send reinforcements to Calypso. 2 days after, a self-proclaimed group vying for independence of Calypso entered the negotiations with the robots. The hitherto unknown group, called the Provisional Government of Calypso, issued the following statement: "This is the Provisional Government of Calypso. The Provisional Government is negotiating with the robots and Calypso Defense Forces to ensure our planet's independence. We will soon be free from Imperial rule." During all of this, the robots used the Calypso emergency broadcast system to piggyback their own sinister messages. Of course, the messages themselves were encrypted. Thanks to a valiant effort by a community of code breakers, the robot code was cracked, even as the robots switched communications protocol to make decryption harder. Following a week of negotiations to stall for time with robot motherships threatening the cities, CDF requested help from Earth to come to Calypso's aid. However, the federal Imperial government responded that Calypso can't expect any help from Earth. Calypso was on its own, and because of that, in response to the robot attacks on Calypso, Major Jenny Caramone declared a state of emergency. All citizens bearing arms were ordered to report to duty stations immediately. Crafters were ordered to manufacture weapons, ammunition, provisions, and supplies. 4 days later, CDF announced that the disturbances in the teleport system on Friday night that caused so much grievance in Hadesheim Central, initially believed to be the result of robot intrusion in the teleporter's computer system, was actually an act of terrorism. The alleged perpetrator, the former mercenary Thomas Hatchett, had multiple ties with leading members of the Provisional Government of Calypso. On Major Caramone's orders, CDF forces raided several locations in Atlas Haven, Hadesheim East, Fort Fury, and Fort Argus, arresting most known leading members of PGC. Among the arrested individuals was its acting Prime Minister Alexandra de Winter, as well as well-known Governor Dumpty. As the robots had evolved into the new forms that have plagued our colony, RDI was very interested in learning the exact form of the latest step in robot evolution. In order to understand the robots, RDI needed salvaged parts from the robot invaders to analyze. The robots have to have a plan somewhere, it's just a matter of finding it and decoding it, said an analyst for RDI. The robots don't take a dump without being programmed to. Actually, they don't take a dump at all, but you get the point. As the state of emergency moved into its second week, the robot enemy concentrated their efforts on Eudoria. Robot attacks continued in the following days in Hadesheim Central, Zikion, Ithaca, Camp Echidna, Fort Medusa, and Fort Troy. After a few days, the robots switched tactics. The robots began to deploy recon teams, mainly in south-central Eudoria. Jason's center in particular was heavily attacked. There was no indication that the assault was intended to conquer or destroy the city, but it appeared to be designed to protect a sighting unit that came under attack from colonial militia. CDF intelligence believes that heavy reinforcements are coming. After 4 more days, Calypso forces fought hard and eventually overcame the robot threat. The crisis was over. The robots left Calypso and only scattered forces remained. Calypso was tested by a ruthless enemy and emerged victorious. Through the combined efforts, Calypso prevailed.